Hello viewers, welcome to another video. So recently there's a recent announcement by Sony that PlayStation 5 is going to be released, and with that sort of like fresh new announcement of a new console, it got me interested whereby would this be a good time to invest in the company that is producing the PlayStation 5, which is Sony Corporation. So I'll be doing a quick sort of like a simple fundamental analysis so far using just the Bloomberg website as well as just probably the Google search engine to get a little bit more details about the PlayStation 5, and let's get right to it. First and foremost, let's see how we can try and find Sony stock information. If you go to Google and you just Google Sony stock price or Sony stock, whichever, and you will come up something like this: Sony Corporation, which is a Japanese company, and this is the stock price for 1 year. It's the stock price in Japanese yen. So obviously Sony is listed on the Japanese stock exchange, where if you're viewing this and you don't have access to the Japanese stock market, you might not be able to purchase the stock. However, you actually check with your stockbrokers whether they have access into this into the Japanese stock market, and whether there's some other means for you to purchase the stock. But getting right to the analysis. So we see 1 year performance, pretty good. So we want to look at more fundamental information, and this is the website that I usually use, which is bloomberg.com. So how do you get the stock information of Sony? Pretty simple. On the top left hand corner here, you will see a search icon. Click on it and just type Sony, S-O-N-Y. Wait for a few seconds. You will see here that the companies and quotes will pop up here. Now I'm looking for Sony Japan. This isn't what I want. Okay, let's try it again. So Sony Corp. Alright, so now it does pop up. So you see Sony Corp, which is the Japanese listing. Notice that it's only in digits 6758, because on the Japanese stock markets, the individual companies are given a number to represent their listing, so-called on the Japanese stock exchange. So we have Sony Corp, which is currently at 7,655 Japanese yen per stock. And on the right hand side here, you can see 1 year chart and 5 year chart. So a quick look at the 5 year chart shows that it is at an all-time high, as in the Sony's stock price is all-time high, and for this year it's also at an all-time high, obviously. So peaking at this stock price right now. So just scrolling down, we can have a quick fundamental information here. It's quite important. Price to earnings ratio of 11.24, which is actually pretty good for an electronics company or a tech company per se. 11.24 is pretty low. How do you get 11.24? Pretty simple. You take the declared earnings per share here of 681.32 yen divided by the stock price 7655. You take the stock price 7655 divided by the earnings per share of 681, and you get 11.24. So 11.24 is a pretty good ratio. Even at its all-time high price, it is still considered pretty low in PE. So 1 year return 43.6. So how it gets 1 year return is from the beginning of the year, the stock price then comparing to the stock price now. Okay, so let's look at some fundamental info. Income statement. Quarterly income statement revenue has been increasing the past few quarters. Importantly, the profit margin is going up, so that's a good sign. Looking at the annual revenue has seen improvement since 2017, and in 2019 we have about the same annual revenue as of the year before, 2018. But the important thing, as I mentioned, the profit margin seems to have increased quite significantly, which is a good sign. Balance sheet, assets has been growing, and debt to assets has increased as well, which means even though the company is growing, perhaps the growth is funded by getting additional liabilities, by additional loans per se. So not really a very healthy thing. Let's look at the annual balance sheet. And you can see that the company has been growing in assets since 2016, with the highest in assets, say in this in billions of Japanese yen. So it's the highest it has ever been in assets in last year, 2019. But the liabilities has grown as well. But debt to assets ratio has fallen a little bit. That means most of the increase here is not purely due to liabilities, but maybe some shareholder equity has increased as well, which is it's a decent sign. But I do like the fact that the total assets is increasing, but not so much that the liabilities has increased along with the total assets. Okay, then third one, let's look at cash flow. So operating cash flow. Okay, so the Q3 2019 was pretty good. Q2 2019 had zero operating cash flow. Interesting. And spent quite a fair bit on investing though. Financing, yeah, spent a little bit. Let's look at the annual aspects. So yearly wise, operating cash flow 2018 was the best year. 2019 was decent, about the same as 2018, but it's much improved from 2016 and 2017. It spent quite a fair bit on investment in 2019 and a little bit in financing. So overall, I would say its cash flow, it's pretty healthy per se. You can see that the company is, just based on the cash flow chart, you can probably see that the company is actually spending quite a fair bit of their money on investing for the future, which it shows here. So cash flow wise, it's not really growing its cash pile, but just instead spending the money investing in other technologies, which probably is like technologies like the PS5 and maybe like electric cars and various stuff that Sony actually is trying to get into. Okay, so talking about the PlayStation 5, we can probably just do some quick research on how it might help Sony grow. So PS5, maybe let's look at the release date. Okay, so the PS5. Okay, let's take a look. PS5. This article says blah blah blah. Okay, but when will it be releasing? 2020. Okay, it says late 2020 launch. So it's about a year, probably we'll see in the holiday season, like October to December, but it can be later than that. Rumored specs next gen. Okay, when release holiday. Okay, so it's gonna release between October to December 2020. VR cost, backward compatibility with PlayStation 4. Okay, so these are the stats. I mean, the technical aspects would be a 8-core AMD chipset. So this sparks an interesting thought in my mind that I should instead invest in AMD. A big disclaimer here is that I have already invested in AMD stock earlier, a few months back, and it's doing well. But something that comes to my mind is, if such a popular console such as a PlayStation 5 is going to be using AMD chips in their systems, and it's going to sell millions and millions of PS5s, it also means that it's going to sell millions and millions of AMD chips. So it's going to speak pretty well for the business of AMD. So the growth of PlayStation 5 and the sales of PlayStation 5s are going to tie in pretty closely to how well AMD does in its chip sales. SSD storage, didn't say which company, obviously doesn't declare now. I mean, I'll be pretty interested to see which company's SSD they will use, because PlayStation 5s are going to be a huge revenue generator for these partnered companies as well. 3D audio. So no news here except the only news of that is going to use AMD chipsets, which is going to spell pretty good news for AMD. Ray tracing. Ray tracing means probably NVIDIA, because NVIDIA is only NVIDIA right now has the technology to do ray tracing. So this probably means that the graphics unit is probably going to be powered by NVIDIA, which is pretty good news for the NVIDIA company as well. SSD, so it doesn't say which SSD it's gonna use. It's gonna use optical disc, Blu-ray player. Doesn't say which company's optical disc or Blu-ray players it's gonna use. Remote play, incredibly powerful, blah 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 blah. Hardware design, dev kits, controller. I think, yeah, games, which is still early because games usually don't get the benefit of the console until late in the console generation. And I guess that's about it. So the important thing is that Sony is currently doing well, because I think from the sales of this PS4 units, which I read somewhere that it's the best console that Sony has sold ever since the PlayStation 2. So it outsold the PlayStation 3, which so PlayStation 4 actually sales did really well, which contributed a lot to the company bottom line and their earnings. So all in all, right now Sony seems like a pretty good buy, but I'm pretty scared of buying a company when it's at an all-time high. So I'll probably be keeping Sony in my watch list, and if there's ever a dip in price in Sony, it might be a good chance to actually get in and buy some Sony stock. And when PlayStation 5 releases, and if the sales do well, their earnings increase, the earnings of Sony increase, it will be a good catalyst for a huge spike in the price of Sony Corp. Okay, so that's about it for this quick analysis. Hope you've learned something. If you want me to analyze any other companies, or if there's any other things about stock investing or trading that you're interested in, please leave a comment on what you like me to do, what you like me to analyze next. And that's all. Have a good day.